Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today we have Alex Clark with us, game creator and YouTuber. Alex, tell us where you're from, what you do, and what people might know you from.
Hey, I'm in Los Angeles in the United States, and in addition to making that card game we were just talking about, I'm also a big YouTuber. I've got 4 million subscribers on there, and I've been growing that for the past 10 years.
I noticed that you started your channel in 2009. Can you tell me a little bit? Well, actually, I noticed you started your channel on the 2nd of December, was it? And then you uploaded.
Yeah, that sounds right.
You uploaded 5 days later. Is there any reason why there was that 5 day gap?
I wish I could remember. That's an excellent. If, these are going to be some detailed questions, I could tell already.
No, I usually notice when I upload things or when I start something, I already have something prepped. Or sometimes when I start something, it's like, oh, I want to start, and then you start it, and then you realize you don't actually have content to upload. So I just kind of wanted to go back to when you first started, how it went through your mind.
Yeah, I'm of the mindset like just get it, just start doing it. The first time you do something, it's going to be awful. So who cares if you're ready or not? Just give yourself a deadline, hit the deadline, and then learn from it and improve the next time around.
Nice. So probably that's what happened. So how was it when you first started? 2009 obviously was completely different. How was
Yeah.
it back then?
Oh, it was the glory days. I feel like an old man saying that, but there was no one online. Like you could, it was a lot easier to stick out, and the market wasn't as competitive, so it was easier to get ahead. That said, I did not get ahead quickly at all, and I wish I knew everything I knew now, because I would have skyrocketed right away if I knew now what I knew, if I knew then what I know now.
What do you know? Obviously, we'll probably cover things a bit later, but just a couple of bullet points. What is it that you're saying that
Just I'm better at producing content. I know to make stuff more relatable and talk specifically to the person on the other side of the screen. I'm better at editing, at animating. I'm just better overall at everything.
And when you first started, what was the process like? Where were you mindset wise? Like also, were you just starting out? Did you come from a career? What was happening in your life?
So I'm in addition to making that game and being a YouTuber, I'm also a comedian, which is why I started the YouTube channel. I was performing a lot at like small corporate events and little clubs, and I was like, there has to be a way to reach a wider audience. And so I started posting videos as a way for when people saw me, they'd be like, this is great, but we can only see you right now. How can we see you every day? And so I posted videos as a way to stay in touch with the audience every day of the year.
And it was just stand-up comedy in clubs and kind of what we can imagine now if we see a Netflix special, or but smaller.
Say that again?
Was it like what we see now with the Netflix specials, like people on stage just talking, except the size of the audience would be probably smaller? Was it kind of like
Yeah. That's what it was. I also came from a circus background, so that I also did like some juggling acts and stuff too. Because when you're starting out, that pays way better than being a comedian. So I did a bit of that as well.
But so, okay, so let's kind of go way back because there's a big background before you started YouTube, which I think would be probably necessary to know to see the turns and twists that you had during your YouTube career. Being a comedian and animator kind of probably comes from somewhere. So where did you study? How did you start your journey? Or
Sure. I got picked on like crazy in school, and so I was always a loner. And then
where was school? Was that in LA or?
No, I was in Massachusetts, where there's a lot more bullies. So I was there, and then I used to watch Aladdin, and I loved Robin Williams. So I was like, oh, he's really funny. I want to get into stand-up. And then around the same time, I found out there was a performing arts school near me. And so I actually made a couple of videos about that. So I got into the art school, which was very exciting. And then I found out that one of my English teachers had been a comedic juggler. And I was like, oh, you got to teach a juggling class so I can learn to do that if that's what I need to do to make it. And so that's where the juggling came in.
How old were you when you started?
17, 18.
So you learned juggling in high school.
Yep.
When you enter an arts program like that, how does your day look like? Is it all arts, or do you also study math? And
So that school was run by hippies, which was a blessing because we didn't have grades. Instead,
really,
we had.
how did that work with the government?
So they had written evaluations. So at the end of every semester, you would get like a 3-paragraph summary of how you were doing in that class, and then yeah. So that's how that worked. And then the day was it was a longer day. So the first 6 or 7 hours of the day was just regular academics, and then the last 2 hours of the day was an extended period performing arts class.
So what kind of things were you doing throughout the week in those extra things? Obviously juggling, but can you give us an example?
A lot of improv, theater. I remember we also we had this thing called Paideia where you could, in between first and second semester, you had 2 weeks to create your own curriculum. And so a friend of mine took that and submitted a proposal to make our own game. And I think that's probably one of the first games we made. And that
What kind of game was it?
it wasn't a card game like the one we're working on now. That was a point and click adventure game about surviving. I'm having a brain fart right now. Oh, about the Underground Railroad and it was trying to get through the Underground Railroad successfully.
So is that kind of where you started the stand-up part of your journey, or what?
Yep. At that high school, we started like the first comedy after school activity lots of words.
You started it, or your teacher started it, or?
The school had only been open for a couple of years, and a friend of mine and we started like the first comedy club at the school called Headgear. I actually went back a couple of years ago to give like a speech with like other alumni, and I wasn't expecting this, but there was a bunch of kids that were still in that group, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're one of the founding members," and I was like, "I feel so old. I feel like the first president of the United States or something."
But I mean, that's pretty cool. I think it still shows like an entrepreneurial spirit, starting something during school. That's kind of how it starts.
Yeah.
And then you just told me you were kind of a loner, which, when I was growing up, kind of similar, introvert here. But I was quite scared during my school time to start something. So what was happening in your mind that you were like, no, we need I mean, unless you were extremely passionate about comedy, why found something? Why not just follow your normal classes?
I think at the time we just wanted an outlet to perform. We were like, this doesn't exist, so let's create it. And I've always had that mentality.
And so it was just, how did that club go? You would literally just do stand-up in there, or was it more than just stand-up?
There was so we held auditions and cast all our friends, as that's how everything works. And then we spent a couple of months writing a show, and it's on tape. If anyone wants to watch it, you can. It's awful. Yeah, so it was a combination of sketches and stand-up and improv games, if I remember correctly.
You can find it on your YouTube channel or somewhere else.
I think that was pre-YouTube. You'd have to break into my house and get the VHS, I think.
You can also upload it.
I could.
No, cool. So we kind of now understand where it started all. So now high school finished for you around 18 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what then? What was next?
I went to Emerson College in Boston, which is a great film school.
Why film school?
I was like, I don't need to go to school to be a comedian or be an actor. I'm already talented. I need a backup plan. So I went to school for film, and I also got a degree in web design because those were things I felt more like you would need a degree in to help you succeed.
Do you still think so?
No.
Why not? I get this question a lot, so I want to hear from you. Why not?
Which question do you get?
If people should go to film school.
Oh, I feel like that it's more. I mean, there's certain things you definitely. Oh, this is weird because it also depends on the person. Like if you're self-motivated and you start projects on your own and you outreach to people, I don't think you need to go to college for film school. But if you're the type of person that needs time to learn and you need to be that time to grow, then I would recommend it. But for me, I kind of feel like it's more about networking and meeting people and being a good example and learning from your mistakes. So for film school, for me, I think it would have been better just to move out here and grow as an artist. But then I also, now that I live here, I also hear from people all the time that move here and they don't know anyone and they end up leaving because they're all alone. Whereas with my school, I came out with a network of like dozens of friends and we all still live here and support each other.
Really, all the friends went with like together to LA,
Yep.
or?
Yep. Yeah. All my closest friends still, I would say 75% of my school moves from Boston to Los Angeles at the end of
How
school.
come? Just because the industry's there, or?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Because I'm here. No. No, because because of the industry for sure.
But I mean, we've actually been looking to scale. My main company is a video agency, and we've been starting to look. We kind of wanted to go to New York because from Amsterdam it's a bit closer, but it just kind of seems like everything that is film related is happening in LA. So
Yeah.
if you'd compare,
Well, I think it's different now, for sure.
is it East Coast?
LA is still. Go ahead.
No, yeah, the East Coast and West Coast. Like, how is it different?
I would say there's just more in LA than in New York, but there's still plenty in New York. I mean, I would definitely say go there if you're just looking to expand. You'll still get a lot out of that.
And then, cool. Then for you, after, well, actually, still film school. How long was film school, and what were the biggest lessons that you got out of film school?
Film school. Yeah, again, I'm more of a do-it-yourself guy. So freshman year, when everyone was still in orientation, some kids I met in my hallway, we started. This was before internet TV and stuff. So we started a half an hour sketch comedy show that we talked to the station manager of the college TV station, and we started airing that within 2 weeks of starting school.
Where were you airing it?
On the local college TV station. So it was a half-hour sketch comedy show, and we produced an episode. This was when you had to like digitize tapes, like let the tape play back and record onto the computer. So we were digitizing tapes, editing it all, and producing a half an hour episode every week for like the first 6 months of college.
Wow.
Yeah. And then at the end of the college, same thing, self-starter, we took like our final let's make a film class, film 3 or whatever it was called, and we were like, sweet, this is our chance to make a movie. And so we wrote this like very Indiana Jones inspired thing, with like a plot and a Mayan temple that rises out of the park, and this guy dies in a pit of lava. And then we showed it, and our teacher was like, is this really what we're gonna do? And we're like, yeah, why else would you take a movie making class? And so we brought our project in on the last day, and there was like, the first guy's was like a man eating a sandwich on a bench. The next one was like a guy roller skating. And then ours was like this 20-minute action adventure film. And we're like, oh, we overdid it.
But how were you able to film that?
I have no idea.
Or did you
but we did
partially animate it?
No, the whole thing was filmed. We built sets. I can probably give you a link. I think there's a trailer up somewhere on YouTube that you can include in the notes of the podcast. But yeah, we built an actual physical model for the temple rising out, and we composited it onto footage to make it look like it was rising up. Then we built a set out of like styrofoam and wood, and paint from Home Depot that looked like the inside of a temple.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you really went the extra mile. But so
At the time, we had no idea. We're just like, we got to get this done.
But it kind of also shows what you meant then with are you self-motivated? Because it seems to me like the other kind of, people you were with in class, they kind of just did their assignments. But then you
Yeah.
guys were doing the sketch, you were doing this movie that nobody asked.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so do you feel like film school opened up doors for you outside of the friends? Obviously, the network is valuable, but do you feel like film school opened doors to put your creativity to something, or do you feel like you would have done it anyways if you weren't in film school?
Hmm. That's a good question. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know on that one. I plead the fifth.
No worries. It's a good one. No, it's always tricky because you never know, obviously. The
Yeah.
environment is a big stimulus. I notice
Yeah.
that when I'm not in the office, I just work a little bit different.
Yeah.
But okay, cool. Let's move on then from film school. So you got a degree, and then you continue with your life. But obviously, you just finished film school, and then how do you end up going? Like, do you still continue doing your sketches? Where does stand-up comedy come in, or juggling?
Um, my college has a satellite office or a satellite school in Los Angeles. So the last semester, I moved to Los Angeles and I got an internship on a show on the TV station Comedy Central. So after that, I just ended up staying in LA and got an apartment and struggled for several years like everybody.
What do you mean you struggled? What was happening?
Just trying to find a job and figure out like what direction you want to go in. Like when I was growing up, I was like, oh yeah, you do everything. You edit the movies, you write the movies, you star in the movies. And then as you get older, you're like, oh, there's one person that edits it and is really good at editing. There's one person that writes it, and they all like work together. So it's like, which one of those things do you want to do, and how can you make money at the one that you're the best at?
But I mean, technically, now you also still manage all of it.
Yeah, YouTube didn't exist yet, so when that happened, I was like, this is my destiny.
So let's go back to Comedy Central. So you get an internship at Comedy Central, like a 6-month internship, 1 year?
Yeah, I would say it was about 6 months. It was for the semester.
What was the internship worth it? What did you learn there?
Yeah. I wish that was one spot where I wish I was more outgoing. I wish I had like asked more questions to people and been more nosy about what everyone was doing. But when I got there, they're like, you're going to help the writers. And so basically I would just scrub the news to try and find headlines for them to think about what they could write about. And I would just go in and leave at the end of the day. But I wish I'd been more nosy and proactive there for sure.
How come you weren't? Because obviously so far you're telling me how your high school went, and obviously if you're telling me hippie, then I'm assuming, connecting with people, that's probably something that is.
I think it was, I was probably a little nervous. I was like a young kid, and everyone else there in my eyes was like this big working fancy professional. But now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, we're all the same. We're all the same dipshits that came out of some school somewhere and got picked on.
So for the people who are getting internships, let's say they get in at like a big company like a Comedy Central or a Disney or whatever, so what would you tell them that they should do?
Just constantly find ways to support the people that you work for and go above and beyond, because they'll remember that forever.
Do you recommend doing more hours as well and putting in more?
I don't think you have, like, more than are required.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to do that. I think you just actually have to take the time to think about the person you're working for beyond what they're asking you to do,
Yeah.
and figure out extra ways you can deliver to them something that's useful to them.
Cool. I mean, I would maybe add to that as well, from my experience, to walk around and connect also with other people a lot, because you never know down the line if you see them
Yeah.
again. Do you feel like you've met some people that helped you down the line there, or?
No, I don't know anyone from that job at all.
Oh, sad.
I wish I did, yeah.
But so, sorry, I forgot. It was a 6-month or a 1-year internship?
It was about 6 months.
So after the 6 months, you said you stayed a bit in LA, but you, I assume, didn't get a job with Comedy Central.
No, after that, I got a job at Fancy Film. It was like a really small post house editing videos. And this was like the beginning of my slow transition to being like a self-employed performer. I would that job was really flexible, so they'd let me take time off whenever I had gigs, and there'd be times where I'd take like 2 month stints off because I'd have a slew of gigs, and so they'd let me take that off to perform and then come
Really?
back. And yeah,
What
yeah, I
were
owe
you
them a lot.
doing in the job that they allowed you to do that?
I was just like a post PA and assistant editor. I'd edit projects when they needed them and help out around the office. And that was a really small company. It was like maybe 5 people.
So then, okay, so you get out of the internship and you got that job, but you just said that you were doing stand-up acts or something like that.
Yeah, I was
So
doing a lot of performing.
why was it an itch that you were trying to scratch, or was it more like you needed the money because it was LA?
Why was I performing?
Yeah. Why outside
Uh,
of your job, why were you putting in the hours in something else? Most people just
oh, because I loved it 100%. I was like, this is what I like the most. I just have to figure out how to make money at it. And so I just kept doing that whenever I could.
So can you tell me more about that journey when you first started in LA, the first acts that you did? How did they go? Why did you feel you wanted to continue?
Man, that is all a blur.
Do you remember your first one maybe?
I'm trying to remember. One thing I do remember is so I was like, even though I wanted it so badly, I was still petrified to go on stage. And so for the first while, I had a partner that I do all my acts with, just because being on stage alone petrified me. And so we'd been working together for a couple of years, and he was kind of giving me this look like he wasn't going to make it much longer. And I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to do this by myself. So after like 5 or 6 years of performing professionally with a partner, I remember the first time I went on stage by myself, I was like shaking and was holding back tears in my eyes because I was so nervous of it failing. And coming from that, like last year we sold out a tour in 23 cities, and it's like crazy to think that even with all that experience, I was still nervous.
Was it really just because suddenly you were alone, and then
Yeah.
how long did it take you to get used to it?
Uh, uh,
Or did you
uh,
get a coach or a mentor? Like what
no,
was
I
it?
didn't have a mentor. I just kept making. I like pain, I guess. I just kept going. If I don't feel a little fear, I try to find a scarier performance space, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I just I wanted it for myself, so I kept pushing myself to do it.
How long did it take before you finally thought, okay, I'm really maybe not the best, but I'm kind of good at this. I should definitely keep doing this because I know a lot of people that start, I mean, including me, there were many moments where I thought, I don't think I'm good enough. The imposter syndrome is so famous.
Yeah.
So for you, you say you really wanted it, and the struggle is real. I can feel like obviously you went through a struggle, but some people give up in the middle. So for you, I can imagine you were feeling that imposter syndrome. When was it slowly, finally getting away? When did you feel like this is really it?
I think when you start, you're like, one day I'll feel good enough, and I need to work to that point. And then when you're finally a pro at it, you're like, oh, you never get to that point. You always feel like you're not good enough, and you just keep pushing. But yeah, and you just accept the fact that you always want to improve, and I think that's part of that's what makes people succeed, is that they always want to improve, and they see what they suck at, and they're like, how can I make this better? And they constantly go back to the drawing board and figure out how to make a better product, whether it's being on stage or creating a company.
How long were you in that job, the flexible one, while you were doing the acts?
I would say about a year and a half, and then I had another job for about a year and a half. So I'd say about 3 years of like flexible jobs, and then I went full time performing around like 23.
How much can I ask maybe financially, like how much were you earning before you said, I'm gonna cut the cord, I'm gonna work for myself?
I have no idea. I would imagine $30,000 a year minimum, I would guess, but I honestly
So
have
pretty
no
much
idea.
your rent and your food and maybe
Yeah,
transport and stuff covered, and then so you were just like, that's it, I'm done, I'll just do this full time.
yeah.
Weren't you scared that some gigs would go away?
No, because I also, uh, I've got to be the most random person you've had on this podcast. I also learned how to street perform, and so there was a time when you could go outside with other people, and so for me it was like, oh, at any point if I really need money, I can go out to a street corner, gather a crowd, and continue to pay rent that way.
Wait, so okay, you were doing the
I
acts.
just blew your mind.
No, no, it's just like, you hit something really important because what you created for yourself was a mental backup, which is
Yeah,
if I quit my job, I have something to fall back on. It's not the main thing I'm doing, but it's a backup. Um,
yeah,
but like, I know for instance ourselves and me, to create that backup, it took years to realize a
yeah,
product that you're really good at, that no matter what, it will always be there to cover rent. Which is a huge step that most of the population doesn't have because they're in a job and they want to sometimes cut the cord, but they don't have that backup. So,
yeah.
how did you get to street performing? When was it even happening? Because obviously you're doing the act, you're doing the job that's flexible, of course, but like when did the street performing happen? How did you get into it? How did it become something like a backup in your mind?
Um, well, in high school, I had that English teacher that I talked about that was a comedian and juggler, and so that kind of put the idea of street performing into my mind. And then in Boston, uh, you're in the Netherlands, right?
Yeah,
Is it Dam Square that has all the street performers?
yeah. Well,
Uh,
not right now, but I mean,
right,
it's
right,
all
yeah.
over.
So in the United States, pretty much there's only like 2 or 3 places in all of the United States that has street performers like Dam Square does, and one of them is in Boston, Massachusetts, in Faneuil Hall. So during college, I would see those guys, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's interesting. It looks like they're making a good amount of money." And so in college, I was a bouncer at a comedy club, and then
You were a
uh,
bouncer, as in security.
yeah,
How?
I've shrunk down since then.
But
Um,
how? Okay, let's back up. How did you end
yeah,
up as a bouncer at the?
right. So my good college buddy Adam Genevizian, who is a big comedy agent right now, he started out there with me as well, and he is like 6.5 feet tall and bulky, and so he got a job as a bouncer, and thank God for him, he said to his boss, I have another bulky friend that could bounce with me. um, but that's how I got that job. Yeah,
Cool. So then, okay, so you have that in Boston. You see all these street performers. Are these like? Do you decide in Boston to already try it a little bit? Are you?
yeah. It was the summer after my, I want to say junior year. We stayed in Boston for the summer and tried street performing while I was working as a bouncer at the comedy club at night.
You tried the street performing with friends? I'm assuming, or
Yeah, that partner I talked about that I performed with the first couple of
were
years.
you then juggling, or what were you doing as a street performer?
Yeah, I think we were juggling. Yeah.
Okay, so you tried it in Boston, and then you moved to LA. Are the rules different in LA for street performing? Because I know city by city in Europe it's different.
Yeah, in LA it's not fun.
What's the
Yeah.
difference?
There's a lot more. What's the best way to say this? Free spirited, free spirited vagabonds to compete with, I guess.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah. So, and then just in general in the United States, I'd say street performing is more frowned upon than in Europe. So there's just not as many opportunities. Like I feel like in Europe, the arts just in general are way more accepting. So every street fair, in my mind, every street fair in Europe is like, yeah, we have a street performer. He's right there and it's free. And here it's like, if you show up to a street fair to street perform, you're going to get arrested for breaking and entering, more or less.
I mean, you still need permits here.
Yeah.
It's not everywhere like that, but in some places. But I mean, places like Amsterdam are pretty strict. Rotterdam less so, which is the second city.
Yeah.
But I know other countries like, the UK, Germany, they're a bit stricter. But I think if you have a permit, you can do those things. But so you're okay. So right now you're kind of saying something interesting because in LA it was different, and then how did you decide that that was going to be able to pay your rent? Like, was your act pre-planned? Did you know that if you do it this way, roundabout, you'll be earning this much, even in a city like LA?
To move on from the street performing, because for us that was more like a starting point for the career and the backup plan. At some point we started booking gigs and got an agent that was really just wonderful, and they would get us. They were a reliable source of income with a lot of gigs that traveled across the U.S.
Oh, so you got an agent. How did you get the?
Yeah.
Like, what was happening that you got an agent? How did that process look
that I was performing at an event in Wisconsin, and I noticed that every single other act. Oh, this is actually a great story for entrepreneurs. So that gig was the Wisconsin State Fair, and it's one of the best performance fairs, I would say, in the country. They have I would say over 200 bands performing every day of the week for 20 days. And then on top of that, they have all sorts of performers and comedians. But that booking came because we had sent out a mass mailing 3 years before and never heard anything from any of them. And then one day the guy calls up and he was like, yeah, my boss said we needed all new entertainment and I've had your folder sitting on my desk for 2 years. Can we hire you?
Oh, like a mass real mailing, not like an email.
Yeah, it was like a folder with our pictures in it and a DVD. And we had spent thousands of dollars sending hundreds of these out all over and didn't hear anything.
Really? Where were you sending it to agencies?
Agencies, fairs, colleges, performance venues, comedy festivals, just anywhere we could think of. And we never heard anything until 2 years later when one guy said he'd had it sitting on his desk for years.
Wow.
And so he booked us. And then when we got to the gig, I noticed that every other act at the event that was in our genre had the same agent. So I was like, all right, I'm going to start sucking up to all these people.
Yeah.
So they had put us in a separate trailer. And every day I was like, Dave, my partner, I was like, Dave, we have to go hang out in that other trailer because they're all represented by the same agent. And then... so we started doing that, became friends with them all. And what I said about the internship, be friends with people and over deliver, that's what I did with all those people in that trailer. Every day I was being super friendly, and anytime I felt like they needed something, I got it. There was one day the trailer ran out of something simple. It was it ran out of water. So that day during lunch, I ran to the store and got several gallons of water just so they'd have it. And huge change. And after the gig was over, a week later, the agent called us and was like, the people in charge of the fair were raving about how great you were. And then I checked with all our acts and they said you were so nice and easy to work with. And you just were helpful all week long. So we want to represent you. So that is something I learned probably during those internship days of like just over deliver with everybody.
Was it because of that internship that you were like, okay, I need to overcompensate because I really want this, or was it just something inside of you?
I'd say it was a subconscious thing that I probably learned from making mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So the agent pretty much calls you from that, which is you got in touch with them by cold print mail, and then the agent gets in touch with you a couple of years later.
Oh no, that was a so I got in touch with the event with cold print mail. The event got in touch with me a couple years later.
Oh, okay. Clear.
And then I noticed doing the event that everyone had the same agent. So then
Clear. Yeah.
I sucked up to everyone that was from the agent, who are now some of my best friends. And then after that, the agent reached out to us.
Nice. And then the agent reaches out. I mean, at this point, you're kind of like, well, not at the beginning, but also not really like jumping up or something like that. So, how do you negotiate with an agent like that? Was it just like, okay, yeah, we'll do it, and then they get a certain percentage and that's it? Or was there negotiation? What was happening?
They got a percentage, and they are just so. That particular agency, GL Berg, is just so. This is how we do things, and we do it in the fairest way possible, and everything is out in the open to discuss. And I just found from working with them for so long and so many other agents that have, they just seem the most genuine and literally care about every single person that they represent like it's a family member. And so I 100% trust them with anything.
They're LA based or?
No, they're in Minneapolis.
And so, just for me to know, how does, maybe you don't want to mention their percentages, but in LA in general, what are the percentages for good or bad agents? And how can you spot a good or bad agent?
I don't know enough about that to say.
Okay, and then maybe the tips on how would you know what to, because you said a couple of agents you've seen already, and then this is a good one. What makes a good and what makes a bad one?
For me, I mean, it's this the same thing as I said about being an intern. Like they go above and beyond and show that they actually care.
How do you test that though? Because
that's something that I've tried to get better at when working with people. Is like I said it a couple years ago to my wife. I was like, from now on, whenever I work with anyone, make sure before I like sign the contract or do whatever, I make them prove themselves. Like just give them some sort of simple test to see if they follow through. Because when you're first in business, when you're first working with someone, everything's a promise. Like, yeah, we can do that and this, and it's going to be amazing, and we love you, and everything's great about it. And then once you sign the dotted line, like they can totally screw you. So for me, it's like, oh, you want to work together? Cool. Could you put together a list of like 10, I don't know, if it was my stand-up, could you put together a list of like 10 events that you have in your roster that you think I'd be a good fit for, and give me a paragraph description of why I'd be a good fit for each one? Like, that is not something that would be hard to put together, but it is something that I think if I asked people to do it, a lot would fail at it. And so it's
really?
just because they wouldn't do it, you know?
So by that small thing, you pretty much just qualify if they're gonna do big things as well.
Yeah, it's just, do they care enough to put in the effort to help?
Right.
Because whenever I work with someone, I want to make sure it's someone that I care enough to help with, and so I just try and find people like that that feel the same way.
I mean, that's nice though. Like, we do something similar when we hire people, like a small recruitment, where we test if what the motivation is real, because motivation tends to go away after a week or two.
Yeah.
And then you're stuck in the company.
Yeah.
So you gotta test that.
100%.
But it's fun that you kind of also do that with agents, which just shows that technically the agent becomes part of the family, like you said.
Yeah. Oh, I don't do that just with agents. That was just advice for working with anyone on anything. Yeah.
True. Do you have multiple agents, or how does that work? Or is it one agent?
Yeah. I would say, what's the best way? Can you ask the question one more time?
Yeah, so do you have multiple agents, or do you advise maybe agents for everything that you do, like stand up or YouTube or
I
whatever
would say
different?
that every agent has a special field, whether that's stand up or commercial acting or TV acting or book writing. Whatever you want to do, there is an agent that specializes in that field. And so you should find an agent that does that. Like there's agents that specialize in live touring, but there's agents that specialize in getting you Netflix specials, right? And so it's like getting a plumber, right? Some plumbers are specialized in commercial plumbing for major real estate, and others are like more handyman. You want to find the one that's specialized in the field you're looking to move forward in.
Cool. I didn't know that. Okay, so then let's move on to the next part. So the agent finally gets on board. Does your life change a lot after that, or what's the difference before and after?
Yeah, they got us gigs nonstop all the time. And it was just full on performing, traveling all over the US, getting sick of airports, and having it be worth it once you got on stage with like a good audience. And then from there, I was like, how do we expand this audience? And so that's when I started getting into YouTube and posting videos regularly.
So when does it, year-wise, when does the agent get onboarded?
Let's see. I'm going to say around 2012.
But your YouTube started in 2009.
Okay, so that maybe it was like 2000. Yeah, I don't know. It's all a blur.
No worries. But so,
Yeah.
but in your mind, was the YouTube first or the agent first?
I would say it was all around the same time, but I would say that the agent took off way before the YouTube channel did.
Cool. So, okay, so then you're doing, okay, now I get it. So you're doing the gigs, and then obviously, well, it's not obvious actually, because what you're saying right now is you were doing the gigs, which is, by the way, you said your dream, and you're performing and doing something you
Yep.
love. But then something in your mind goes just, well, if I'm assuming right now, kind of like during high school, something in your mind goes off and it's like, let's found this club, and then suddenly
Right.
you're saying like, let's scale this audience. Why? Was it people approaching you just saying, hey, I want to see more of you? Or was
Yeah,
it
that was
you?
it. It was like years of people being like, "Oh, we come to see you every year, but we can only see you one day of the year. Like, how do we see more of you?" And it was like, "How can I give?" And as I thought about that more, I was like, "That's true. Like, even if I did a show every hour of every day, I'm still performing for like one small group. Whereas on the internet, you can reach the entire world in one click." And so I was like, I have to scale this audience, and that is why I started posting on YouTube.
It sounds to me like it was a gradual mindset shift. Like it wasn't happening right away. What happened for you to? Oh, how was your reaction at the beginning? Was because YouTube existed already, so
I always watched YouTube from like the day it started, and I think similar to like how I was afraid to be on stage by myself, I was probably afraid to post a video, and so I think eventually I was just like, screw it, I'm just gonna do it, and I'd say I posted videos for like 5 or 6 years before one took off.
and how does the animation tie into it? Because for the people just listening and not on computer or something like that, you obviously make animations and as
Yeah.
well you produce and film yourself sometimes. Where did you learn the skill from film school, and where why
The
combine them?
first job I wanted as a kid was to be an animator, and that's because I was really good at drawing. Um, that was like the first thing I remember being good at. And then I started taking some animation and drawing classes and realized how long and arduous and boring being an animator was. And I was like, oh, maybe I don't like art. Like I said earlier, maybe I don't like the art of Aladdin. Maybe I like Robin Williams. And so I transitioned to comedy. And then after doing my YouTube channel for a while, I was like, I used to draw as a kid. Maybe if I try switching to animation, That's closer to comedy. Maybe that's the move I need to make. And so I tried making one animated video after posting live action videos for a couple of years. And the animated one, I went from getting like 1,000 views a video to like 50,000 overnight. And I was like, oh, I got to make the switch. And so I think that was in 2012, December 2012.
Yeah.
And then from that point on, I was like, I got to go all animation. And I learned to draw again.
So it's pretty much the audience telling you this is what we want to see, and then you just make the switch. But isn't it? So we actually do some animation as well, corporate work. It takes a while. Like it's not easy, and what you do is very custom work.
Yeah.
How long does it take you to then make a video or something like that? You can't just whip it up, or
Yeah. So I'm like a very analytical problem solver person. And so for me, like I'm more interested in the back end of animation, which sounds really weird, especially since I just said I hated how analytical and boring it was. But so for me, like I've perfected like reusing assets, and so we have like a super organized library of backgrounds that are like categorized by like location and type. So like if we need a scene in a bedroom, I can go in a folder and there's like every angle of a bedroom possible, with like our backgrounds are like everything is a separate layer, so they're completely customizable and reusable. Our characters are super rigged puppets that are like 200 layers. So the main character that represents me, Alex, is like 150 layer puppet about, and we can even drag and drop animations onto him to make him walk or talk or act. Like all that stuff was animated once, and now it's just a reuse, like as easy as like searching for a GIF online.
right. So you animated it. How did you animate it? Which software did you use?
We use Toon Boom, which if you're interested in animation, I would be impressed if you could show me software that was better suited for it, because what Toon Boom does is just, to me, mind blowing.
What does it do then?
It has it's hard to explain it with just words, but it just has so many custom features, and it's feature rich that as far as I can see, there's no other software that has as many features in it as Toon Boom does. Like it has 3D character, 3D camera, which gives you depth. It gives you character rigging, which lets you bend and deform drawings in an easy way. It has, I mean, I could talk endlessly about it if I could remember the words, but
No worries.
I would say the most basic explanation is that the amount of features it has is uncomparable.
I mean, you can go pretty technical on this one, but so all the features in there, but that's when you animate new assets, right?
Yeah.
Once you've animated them, I can imagine the software that you're using is pretty intense, so you're switching to a different software that's less intense.
Nope. We just we do all the animation in that software.
Really?
Yep.
And can I ask like what kind of computers you then use, because the export time must be pretty long.
We just do it all on like base model, or not base model, the whatever the like mid-tier iMacs are.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But I would say we do have one PC because we had a PC master race person work here for a while, and I would say that's the route to go, just because it the graphics card and those are way more affordable, and it renders a lot faster on that.
Really? Did you try an external graphics card as well? You can buy them online.
No, we haven't tried that yet. No.
You should definitely try. You can get a lot faster in those things. It'd be interesting to hear maybe later on also what's faster, a PC or a Mac with an external graphics card. Because you can buy one for I think $300 on Amazon.
Oh, cool.
And then you can exchange the actual so you can buy the rig, and then exchange the graphics card from Nvidia or Radeon.
Cool.
And then that's good because you can upgrade it.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to hear, because I know for software that is strictly Apple, you definitely need a Mac. But then if you use graphics, I've always heard Windows. So you're kind of saying the same thing right now.
Oh, I would totally say the same thing. Yeah.
So the graphics card would be the most important part, and that's rig.
Yeah, for sure. I think for anyone just starting out, like any computer you have is going to be fine. Don't worry about having the most powerful computer, but we're so into the program with the compositing and how taking it to a super advanced level that I think we need the more power.
How come it's different now? Is it just because there are so many layers?
Uh, yeah, we require more power just because we use so many more layers, and the puppets we use have so many deformers on them. Um, I would say a puppet probably has one, two, like 10 to 20 deformers that can bend and move the puppet around.
Right.
And so when you have that many deformers on a puppet and then there's 3 or 4 puppets in a scene, it just starts to become taxing on the computer.
Right. So can I ask then, you have a video, like let's say a 5 minute video. How long does that take you?
If we were starting from scratch, it would probably take us a month, I would say, if we had absolutely nothing.
But with the
But
library that you have right now.
with the library we have right now, we can 1 or 2 people can pump that out in about a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you get, because you publish more than once a week. So how do you,
No, we're publishing once a week right now.
okay. Okay, that explains it because I saw that you were, but you usually also post live videos. I just saw you posted that as well.
Yeah, the live video we just posted was because we're launching that card game on Kickstarter, which we're getting a great response on, and I just wanted to quickly answer some people's questions, so I did that live video as well.
Tell me about the card game. So I wait, maybe let's keep that for a second. So you got the agent. The YouTube is kicking off. You made the switch to animation because it gets more audience. So now you're doing this card game, but you did a card game before in high school, you said, or in college.
That was like a point and click adventure game.
Yeah.
On the computer.
But the game making has been kind of in you for a while. Have you done any other games since then, or is this your first one since that old one?
I would say the love of games has been there forever, and this was the first one that we actually made. My friend Zach, that I went to college with, his wife and my wife, we'd always play games together and be like, "We're gonna make one. We're gonna make one." And then he had his twins, and I was like, "If we don't do this now, we're never gonna do it." And so that was what inspired us to make the game.
So this is the first game since pretty much last time.
Yeah.
And then when you're doing this game, so you're doing it with a friend, which is always nicer. How does that work? And maybe also the dynamic doing it with a friend, because obviously I have a best friend, and then we laugh about things and doing a YouTube channel together. But then you actually do it. Is there a difference in your collaboration and how you work together? Does it help?
The friend that I did it with, remember earlier when I was talking about starting that TV show in college?
Right.
That was the guy I did that with, and then when we made that ridiculous action adventure movie, it was that guy as well. So like we've always collaborated together on projects. So I think we just like each other and respect each other a bunch, so that working together, it's very easy for us to throw responsibilities at each other and know who's in charge of what.
So how did it start? Okay, so you're playing the games, that's how it started, but when did it really get to the nitty gritty? You're doing this, you're doing that.
I would say about a year and a half ago is when we started taking it really seriously and just getting together every week and playing the game over and over again to find out how terrible we could make it. Just like with performing or starting a company or anything, it was like, let's be really bad at this and keep making it better until it's at a point that we can share it with everyone. And then I would say maybe 6 months ago, we were like, all right, we have something that's cool. It's time to start doing the artwork and getting the balls in motion on sharing this with the world.
So it's pretty much 1 year, and every week on like a Saturday you would get together and play what became this card game?
Sugar Heist, yeah.
And then how was it at the beginning? Like, was it really bad or something, or how did you even come up with the first
So
try?
right. So for the mechanics of the game, we looked at all the games that we'd play all the time. Be like, what do we like about these? And we're like, well, we like trading cards, and we like wreaking havoc on other players, like instigating arguments. Basically, I love card games that instigate arguments, or like we have to make a game that instigates people getting upset with each other in a fun way. And so that was how we started. And then we'd set up a bunch of rules and played at once. And we're like, oh, this is not fun. This is fun. This sucks. This doesn't suck. And then we just did that over and over again until we had more doesn't sucks than does sucks.
How long were those games initially?
What do you mean?
So you started in the beginning a year and a half ago. Every week you sat down, and then you were playing these kind of beta games. How long were you playing it for? 20 minutes together, or
Yeah, I would say games would last anywhere from a half an hour to an hour and a half.
nice?
Sometimes we'd play it all the way through. Sometimes it would be so bad that after 10 minutes, we're like, we have to stop. This is awful.
So okay, so half a year ago it becomes something fun. Do you
Yeah.
then get your wives together? Like, who's the first person who actually saw it outside of you two?
I would say my animators were probably the very first people to play the game that wasn't the core group. One day they stayed after work and we all played the game. And they gave some feedback and we went back and improved it again.
Why the animators?
Just because they were here already, and I know that and they play games all the time. Like they have game groups where they go out and play card and board games with their friends.
Nice. And then, okay, so then the animators, then you actually design it professionally, and
Mm-hmm.
then you start printing it. I saw in the video that you printed it in the printer first.
Yeah, I have some of those right here, actually.
Those look actually pretty good. Why not create like a digital experience where people can just print the card? Well, probably bad for copyright.
What was the question?
Why not just create a digital experience? Like they just download the cards and can print it themselves.
We are gonna have that, but this is more meant to be. We wanted people to have like something that could last a while, so there is gonna be a print and play available where they can print it out, but it also requires a ton of cards. There's 180 cards in the game, so I can't imagine someone wanting to sit there and cut out 180 cards.
Cool. So, okay, so then you have that, the animators take over. How does the process work like, to print something like that? Do you go to a printing shop, or like who do you go
In the U.S., there's a couple. We've been, I mean, as everyone has, it like made it more difficult to make this all happen with COVID-19. But because the one print shop we were going to use, like they just aren't in operation right now, so it took some researching to find one. But there are a couple of, when you're prototyping a game, there's a couple of great websites that will do. It's hard to tell, but these are not as high quality as something you'd buy in the store is. They're pretty close, but it's not an exact match. But there are companies that will like do basically print on demand games for you, and that can include games with like little miniature figures, games with cards, games with boards, like all of that stuff. There's a couple of great websites that can put together mock-ups for you.
and then you just Googled it, or
Yep.
okay.
The one we used, if people are Print Play Games is the one we used for these, and I'd recommend them. It's good quality and fast turnaround. And then the other major one is the Game Crafter, and those both offer great resources for building prototypes.
Cool. So then, you started kind of in your friend circle, and then they gave you the green lights. How do you scale that? When is the light bulb going on of, okay, this needs to go to the world? Like, do you first test it out, try to sell it to your friends and family, or do you right away go to the Kickstarter?
Well, the goal was always to share it with my YouTube audience. I'm in a lucky position that I already have a fan base that will help bring it to that next level of letting everyone know about it. So we the goal was like, let's get the fan base excited about it, and hopefully that is enough of a push that it can get it more into the mainstream of other games on Kickstarter.
Do you have a proper strategy in place? As in, obviously that strategy is in place, but are you gonna do paid advertising and stuff like that to get it to people that don't know you yet?
Yeah, we're gonna see how the first day of funding goes, and then based on that, we'll possibly invest in like Facebook and Instagram ads.
Nice, cool. And the whole infrastructure is done by the providers, so then you don't have to worry about the whole logistical part, right?
We have a separate company that's in charge of all that stuff. So the ones I mentioned, Print and Play Games and Game Crafter, those are more just to print mock-ups, but we have a separate company that's helping us with the logistical stuff.
Okay. Is there like a number you have in mind of, okay, if we achieve this number, then it's worth it for us to take this to the world, or if we don't achieve that number, it'll just stick with my fans?
I personally, I mean, I hope it's super successful because the game is awesome, and I know when people play it, they're gonna love it. But personally, it doesn't matter to me how well it does. Like, it would be a dream if it made lots of money, but me, I'm more excited about just the people that want it, get it. Just because it's fun, and I would love to give them something fun to share with their family and friends.
I saw in your last video that you uploaded just before the call that you said it'd be a dream that if it's in the stores.
Mm-hmm.
I think your wife asked you that, but
Yeah.
don't you have? I mean, you're doing it with a friend, so there's a partner involved. Don't you have a strategy to get it into stores, or is that something for after you get feedback from the Kickstarter campaigns?
The company that's handling all the logistical stuff does have relationships with stores, but that's still like lots of people make card and board games, especially these days where like anyone can do it. So getting it into a store, there has to be enough of a demand for it. We have to prove ourselves basically because we've never had anything in a store before, right? So
Yeah.
we have to say, look at how many people bought this game already. If you have it in your store, you're going to have the same success.
Right.
So
it's super important to have your audience.
Yeah, 100%. I think we have a huge advantage, and I'm confident it will end up in the store. But at the end of the day, like, it's not up to me. It's up to everyone coming together and backing the Kickstarter to make it happen.
Right. So pretty much, in short, your audience plus all of their friends, and then if they just keep enjoying it. I mean, the Kickstarter is 30 days, right?
Yeah, and I have a sizable audience too. Like, I have 4 million subscribers on YouTube, so I'm not at a disadvantage by any means. But
how do you get in touch with your audience? Because with YouTube, after you hit a certain number, especially like above the millions, I can imagine, not everything pops up in their feed. So how do you interact with all? Well, I'm imagining you're trying to interact with almost all of them. So how do you get directly to them?
Two things that I love are Discord, which for anyone that doesn't know, is this great chat app where you can set up communities. And it's basically a chat room app, but it's the current trend, and it's been a great way for everyone that's involved in my community to be able to talk to each other. So I've been loving that. And then as recently as this week, I just started using this thing called community.com, which gives you do you know what that is?
No, I've never heard of it.
Oh, it's great. Community gives you a phone number that people can text message. And then it's not in beta, but it's like slowly coming out of beta. And it gives you just all the resources to be able to respond to people one-on-one, but in a way that can scale to thousands of people. So I get to have one-on-one conversations with people, but also be able to scale that and text people in a way where it still feels one-on-one, but I'm reaching a mass amount of people.
Because the interface of community.com is on your laptop, so you can message fast.
It's on the laptop and it's on the phone, and it just gives you, I don't know how to explain this, but it does give you a way to like respond to messages, multiple messages at once, but still give it that one-on-one feel.
Okay, clear. So it's just a little bit more organized, gives you a little bit more features, and it's not all over the place like a WhatsApp or a iMessage.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Cool.
So like I can search for keywords, and everyone that uses that keyword in a message, I can respond to them all at once.
Oh, wow.
And they get it in their text message as in like an individual message just to them.
So how much does community.com cost?
I believe it's $100 a month for the first 1,000 users, but I think their pricing structure is still something they're working on, so that could be totally off, but that's just what I remember.
And then, okay, so again, I'm assuming you're not getting everybody on text.
Right.
So what do you do that gets you the most amount of interaction with your audience?
I would say,
like, how do you hit all 4 million? I'm imagining you can't hit all 4 million.
No, it's impossible. It is literally impossible. I'm sure, even though I've been talking about this game for months, there are still people that will be like, what do you mean you're making a game? And it's like, or every single time I post a video, I would say there's at least 100 comments. They're like, why don't you post videos anymore? And it's like, I've been posting a video every week for the past 5 years. What do you mean, why don't you post videos anymore? And so it's just, especially with all the competition for eyeballs these days, it's just, you have to accept that not everyone is going to know everything.
Do you have ideas on what the best practices are to actually get as much in touch with them?
No, but if you figure it out, let me know first.
Cool. Well, we're actually looking into it as well. That's why I was interested. But I'll let you know if I discover something. So, okay, so to give me like a little bit numbers wise, so you have these numbers, community.com, stuff like that. Instagram I saw as well. Do you feel like your audience, like if let's say you would start an Instagram today from zero, and you would say, hey audience, I have a new Instagram, how many of those 4 million do you think would convert onto an Instagram platform?
None. Yeah, for me, I mean, I'm sure it's different for everyone, but for me, getting people to go from platform to platform is really hard. Like,
really, why?
I don't know. I would say for me, like, if I was like, hey, go follow this new Instagram, I wouldn't get any traction. But if I was on YouTube and I was like, hey, go follow this other YouTube, that would get a lot more traffic. That would get a ton of people because it's within the platform. But to get people to switch, like, I don't understand that at all. Yeah.
And have you ever tried like getting them from YouTube towards an email or something like that? Something where they have a newsletter from you?
I would say the most recent conversion I've tried to make platform to platform is this card game. And so we announced that, and the card game got, I'm looking right now, 10,000 signups about from reaching out to an audience of 4 million.
But I saw that you said in your last video it was like 20,000, but not all of them confirmed.
Yeah.
Why do you think that happens?
They didn't know they had to confirm. It went to their spam. They didn't see the email. It could be anything. I'll send out emails. Like, for instance, last year I went out on tour, and I'll get email, and we sent out an email blast being like, hey, we're going on tour. And I'll still get emails to the day. They're like, hey, I just saw this email that you're going out on tour. Sorry that I missed it. And I'm like, who checks their email from 8 months ago?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
So, interesting. We've tried some stuff over the past couple of months, because since MailChimp changed a lot of things, which was May last year, I think. A lot of these emails don't get into the inbox, And what we've
Yeah.
noticed is if we build our landing pages a little bit different, warning them that there is going to be a confirmation link and it will arrive in the next like 1 or 2 minutes, it
Hmm.
seems to help a little bit. But we also have sometimes we just skip the double opt-in and we go straight for the single opt-in. Have you ever tried that?
Um, yeah, I do it for my personal email list, but for this, since we're working with a company, we had to do the double opt-in.
What's the difference between if you notice like double opt-in and single opt-in? Do you notice a difference?
Personally, I don't I don't I don't know why we need a double opt-in. I know it's the law sometimes, but for me, I'm just like, if they put in their email address, let me send them emails.
No, the double opt-in is not for the law, I think. Well, now with GDPR it might be a bit different, but before that, I think it was more of a making sure that they put in the right
Oh, it's a
email.
legitimate email.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because if you're sending to 10,000 subscribers, but 9,000 of those are like Brian with two N's or something like that, and then you
yeah,
screwed up and suddenly you're paying for a subscriber that doesn't exist.
yeah.
So that's usually
So in
why
that
they do it.
regard, I'd say the double opt-in is worth it for sure.
Cool. Okay, so a lot about the card game. I'm probably gonna ask
It's
a.
so good. Get it, guys.
Yeah,
Kickstarter, May
no,
26th. It's gonna be awesome.
I'm definitely getting it. I've been excited, but I'm definitely gonna ask a bit more later about it. But let's go a little bit back again because I was super excited where we were going with the whole. So you got the agent thing, and now you're doing the YouTube thing. So your first couple of years, you're doing live videos, right? You're not doing animation yet. So how many subscribers did you get before you made the switch to the well, yeah, before you made the switch to make an animation?
I don't remember exactly, but I would say when I posted my first animation, so from 2007 to, or when did I start the YouTube channel?
2009.
I'd say from 2009 to 2012, I had like 10,000 subscribers total. And then once I switched to animation, I jumped up to like maybe like 100,000, and then within a year or so it just started getting into the millions.
You think it was because of the animation? If so, what were you doing that was so attracting them? That was so different even than the live videos.
I mean, at the time, it was different. There was maybe two people posting animated videos on YouTube in the similar format to me, and so at the time that stuck out as individual. Now there's like, there's so many that I couldn't even name them all. But at the time, it was a very unique genre.
That's why. And then obviously YouTube started growing. Outside of posting weekly, you were posting weekly, right?
Hmm.
So outside of posting weekly and then switching over to the animation, were there any like big things that you were doing that gave you a light, like a aha moment where you were like, okay, if I do this, it will give me more subscribers?
Um, I can't think of anything now.
Because I saw, for instance, you talk a lot about your life, but then I saw also that one video about the gun policy with the cats.
Oh yeah, that video exploded.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I've tried to make other videos similar to that, and they just haven't clicked as well. So for people tuning in that have no idea what we're talking about, I did a video called Guns Explained with Cats, which was just a little parody of like if having a cat lady on your street and how absurd she gets with cats. But that's the way people are treating guns in America. And that exploded. But I think that was also at a time when it said what needed to be said in an appetizing way. So people that didn't even care about the comedy of it just shared it because they're like, this is the point I need to get across, and it's getting it across in a way that is easy to consume.
but were you always looking for trending topics? Like, what got you to that first 10,000, and then what got you from 10 to 100? So from 10 to 100, I'm assuming it was the animation that you were unique and everything. But to 10,000, you were probably doing something that's still Were you talking about trending topics? Was it relatable subjects just because it was your life?
I would say the video that like really blew up was I made this video called "My Hot Babysitter Got Me in Trouble," and it was about the story from school in middle school when I dated my babysitter. And so, who was about the same age as me? Anyways, it's a ridiculous topic, but I think that scratched the itch of like a relatable story so people connect with it and see themselves in the shoes of me. It gave them excitement of like, oh my God, I wish this would happen to me. And then the third thing was that it ended on a cliffhanger that was like, oh, I want to see more. And so when you make content online, like as much as you want to make something that's good, like that matters very little, unfortunately. What matters is you make content that people watch to the end, that they leave comments on, and that they watch another one. So when you make your content, those are the three most important things. So that video got a lot of people to leave comments. It got a lot of people to subscribe because they wanted to see more of the story. And it got them to click on other videos, which is, as far as YouTube is concerned, that's literally all the algorithm cares about. And it's the same with TikTok or Twitter or Instagram. Like, as much as you're like, oh, I want to make this good thing, it doesn't matter. What matters is making stuff that turns on the buttons on YouTube that says I have to share this with more people.
So, do you make then a series about the babysitter, or like if you make content now, do you think out a series of content, part one babysitter, part two babysitter, and then to trigger those three things? Or is
Yeah,
it just one?
that's been interesting. So the babysitter thing we wrapped up in December with a movie, which is crazy. We posted like an hour and a half long movie that.
I saw that.
Yeah, I can't believe we did that still. But so they love, like, as far as the algorithm is concerned, it loves continuation and like getting people to come back for more. But the audience in the comments, they're like, what's with all these cliffhangers? So it's been interesting figuring out an approach that like makes them want to see what happens next, but doesn't get them upset that the story isn't finished. So the most recent one is I've been telling the story of how I met my wife, and we're trying to scratch that itch of like I want to know what happens next, but also give them a conclusion that doesn't leave them upset. Which is weird because TV is so episodic and like
Yeah,
wait for the
exactly.
next episode. So
So how do you do it then? Because with TV, there are cliffhangers, which is why you keep
yeah,
watching the episodes. And obviously, like for instance, I watch things like Suits, and I get super angry because it's like, no, why, why now?
yeah, yeah.
But so YouTube, you're telling me is different, and you don't really want to do such cliffhangers because your audience will get upset. You're telling me.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say because like their reaction might be as trivial as the way you just were talking about Suits or whatever you're talking about. They're like, no, why now? All I can see is the text of the comment, which is, why did you do that to me? Right? Which I can read many different ways. So, one thing I found that helps is instead of just ending it right on the cliffhanger, is being like leaving it up to the audience and like having a conversation with them one on one at the end of the video. That's like, we could end the story here, or if you want me to continue it, let me know that, and we can continue it in the next one. Or like letting it become more of a choose your own adventure than a cliffhanger, right? So at the end of the video, being like, on the next one, it could go in this direction or that direction. Which part of the story do you want me to tell? And we've seen success with that in pleasing people.
So it's kind of like a new generation TV series where at Netflix you pretty much get your TV series with a cliffhanger, and here
Yeah.
it's more like you make a full rounded story with a conclusion, but then at the end you have this question, do you want to explore more? If so, what do you want to explore?
Yeah.
Interesting. How did you come up with that, or was it just naturally came up?
Lots of trial and error, similar to, yeah, I think my whole life is trial and error, actually.
Sounds like it. But it sounds like you're learning, which is the most important part.
Yeah.
So Sorry, so those first 10,000 was about those topics that you were just mentioning. Then, do you think the 10,000 to 100,000 was because you introduced animation on top of that?
Yeah, for sure.
Then, what do you think got you from 100,000 to your first million?
Totally that babysitter video. That first babysitter video got me like a million subscribers in a couple of months or a couple of weeks. I'm sorry. It was
Wow.
in the growth from that was insane. It was unbelievable.
So it was literally just you got lucky with a certain topic and then it just
Yeah.
hit home.
Yeah.
Do you wish that sometimes you could produce more than once a week just so that
Oh
you'd be
yeah. I
able
wish
to?
I could produce every day of the week. It would be great, but it's just, especially with animation, it's impossible. Even with a video a week, it's a real. The animation part is challenging and as difficult as it is. That's very like paint by number, and so it's easy for us to accomplish. The thing that is most draining for me is coming up with the scripts and interesting stories and topics, because with YouTube they want personal experiences and personal stories, and so to come up with something fresh and interesting every single week on top of directing and producing all these videos, that's the most challenging part. So I don't know how one person could do that.
And why have you never thought, just out of interest for me, because we deal more corporate, so I get to see that part. Why have you never thought of it as a studio where you get, a couple of screenwriters together, you think out your ideas for the next year, and then you get like an editing team, or you even maybe outsource the editing? I don't know.
So we did that I've hired writers before, and trying to get people to match my voice has been very challenging. I even went as far as to make a really detailed and thorough like script Bible with like, this is the voice it needs to be in, and this is how it needs to be written, and this is what it needs to include and not include. And like, I don't know if I just didn't find the right people, but it was difficult to find people that wrote in the same tone as I am. And because YouTube is so personal, like, I'd say that's the most important thing.
and what about mentoring somebody? Or
What do you mean?
I don't know. I've noticed that delegation has been one of the hardest things also for some of the team leaders in my team, and
Uh-huh.
that you
Like they have a hard time telling people what to do.
yeah, they have a hard time translating their voice, like you said,
Yeah.
and then I've noticed that it's difficult when, especially when it gets more personal, when we do creative work. But when you get people like really as a blank slate in the beginning of their careers, and
Uh-huh.
they stay with you for like, let's say, a year or something like that, suddenly it just becomes a little bit, easier to explain these things to them, because they haven't gotten outside perspectives or something like that
Yeah.
to have a different voice. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Have you tried something like that, like interns or?
I would say writing wise I haven't, but animation wise I would say one of our best. I work with animators all the time, and I would say my best success story wasn't someone that applied for a job. It was someone that kept sending in fan art, and I was like, hey, you're really good at this, do you want to come in and intern? And then they came in and intern, and they were great, and I was like, hey, do you want to possibly uh, start out assistant animating? And then they did that, and they totally killed it. And then I was like, hey, you're really good at this, do you want to be a full-time animator? And that's similar to you were saying, someone that like was mentored and grew up within the system of what we do here, and so they just get it. And I think that was our most successful person we've worked with, I would say. I mean, I work with so many great people, but that one was just like, it was such a pleasant surprise for both her and I think.
What's the issue of doing that for writers?
um it's hard to it well, one thing with writers
I mean, I'm
is,
struggling with the same thing, I have to say. For
yeah,
writers specifically, it's quite difficult. But
yeah.
I'd love to hear from you, like, why?
Well, writing is hard. I hate doing it myself, so I think that's the first problem. But the second thing is um, uh, a lot of the writers we hired would write it more in line with a traditional TV show with like dialogue and scene changes and a story arc, which there is a story arc, but with YouTube, it's more about personal anecdotes and telling stories. And as many times as I'd be like, we have to take all this dialogue out and make it directed at the person listening, like it just wasn't conveyed in the scripts. And so, um,
And
finding
what if you take like a retreat or something like that? You do a retreat where you sit down with screenwriters and you literally plot out the next year of content.
I think so. We did do that when we were using writers a lot. I think the other thing is that I've also gotten way more efficient at writing scripts, and so I have less of a need for that.
Right.
But the other thing, we did do that for a while, where we'd meet once a month and we'd talk about what their script would be about, and then they'd go out and write it. And like I said, I put together that really thorough writer's guide and Bible that like detailed how many lines of dialogue should be in a script and how it should be written, and the perspective and voice and how each character should talk. And again, like all my stories are based on real life, so it's not like they're making stuff up, but it just still wasn't in the right voice and in a way that worked for me. So I'd love to try it again. It's just something we've put on pause for a while.
Interesting. Cool. Yeah. So then 100,000 to 1 million was the babysitter. Obviously, you're going now 1 million to 10 million, or even 5 million because you're close. Do you feel like there's a different thing you're doing now?
What do you mean?
Are you focusing on different things, or maybe you've piled up everything you've learned and you just keep doing that, or have you introduced a new learning lesson to it?
For the like, what is my next phase of my career? Is that kind of
No,
what you're asking?
well, for YouTube specifically. So the first 10,000 was about getting those three topics in order, something that they comment on, that they come back and stuff like that. Then
Right.
afterwards you introduced animation, and then
Yeah.
afterwards you introduce these topics that are very clickable.
You're right.
So now that you're going into your next phase of YouTube, so to say, do you feel like there's another learning lesson that you're doing? Are you doing more of these trending topics?
Yeah, totally. So, as I said earlier, like the whole reason I started my channel was to scale my performance audience.
Yeah.
And so we did it last year for the first time, and we did 23 cities, and it did great. But we got lots of emails that were like, we didn't know you did stand-up. We didn't know you were a comedian. What are you going to be like on stage? And then I'd finish the show, and they'd be like, that was really great, but that is not what I was expecting. And so from that, we're like, oh my God, the whole reason I started this is not clear to the audience. So now it's been all moving forward. I want to make it sure that it's very clear in every video that I'm a comedian, and that what I'd be my persona on stage, because I guess it's a little bit different than it is in the videos.
Right.
And so originally I was just going to start recording all of my sets and talk about similar to topics that are in the videos, and kind of interweave those with the stories that I tell. Similar to how, did you ever watch Seinfeld?
Yeah, I did.
Do you know how like at the beginning or the end of Seinfeld there'd be like a little clip of him doing stand-up?
Yeah.
I was going to do something similar to that, but animated. So there'd be the animated story, and then there'd be like a little clip of animated stand-up that would be related to the topic. And so that was the plan, and then every comedy club in the entire world closed because of the pandemic. So that idea has been put on pause right now, but that is what we're going to do as soon as we can.
But why not do an animate, like you said yourself, just do the animated skits. So you not being like just you like this, and then just animate yourself doing your.
Because I think that's what we were already doing, I feel like, for years, and they're still not getting that I'm a comedian. So I think actually having the feedback of a live audience and like seeing me at a microphone is what will make that clear.
So pretty much making that Seinfeld. So I guess the next part of your journey is making clear what you really do and getting your whole audience on board. And I guess the transition that you're then making is getting your offline world connected with your online world, where before it was very much about growing your online world
Yeah.
and your offline world, but now it's about bringing them together and connecting them.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really cool. So, outside of the card
Oh,
games,
and just to give you a heads up, I have to go in about 15 minutes.
yeah, sounds great. We're about to wrap up, anyways.
Cool.
But I guess that's partially what I wanted to wrap up with was going kind of to the future and the next thing that you want to do. Um, your YouTube, it's pretty clear. The card game that you're doing right now, that's kind of again bringing your offline and online together as well.
I'm so excited about it. It's so good.
But outside of the card game and your YouTube, have you thought about stand up on Netflix or something like that? I can imagine that could be interesting. Or
Yeah, I think that is the next kind of area I want to go to is uh, a stand-up special or some live performance more and getting it back to that, because the past couple of years have been all about growing the online audience, and like where my heart and like true passion is in performing for people. So I mean, all these other projects we've talked about are super fun and I love them and I put my heart into them, but I feel like the the most satisfying I ever feel is when I get off stage and someone was like, that was the best thing I've ever seen. And that just like it gives me life and it makes me feel like I did something good for a person to like give them that much joy. So um, that is what I want to share more of.
for people who'd be looking and thinking um, that they have that, live entertainment bug, they maybe like speaking or
Mm-hmm.
entertaining or something like that. But obviously now with Corona, YouTubers are a little bit better off than
Yeah.
so. How would you tell this person to transition into digital, and what tips would you give this person?
Do it and trial and error. Just do it over and over and over again. And good luck because it's so oversaturated right now. The
Any
one,
Yeah, any
one
real like practical things they should definitely be doing or not doing?
um, be be ready for when it's. I would say. I mean, I'm a very interesting person because I'm interested in both the YouTube, which is a very secluded life, and the performing, which is very in front of people. And I think most people don't have both itches, both bugs. But I would say if you are a live performer, like there's so much you can be doing right now to be ready for when this is over. And I think when it is over, people are going to be so desperate and excited to see live entertainment that they're just going to explode and you're going to have so much work.
So how would you tell them to prepare or ready for that?
Update your promo material, reach out to people that are in your industry that are affected by this and just be like, I'm thinking about you and hoping you're okay. Just like the same story of like how at that fair I got water for all those people. Like just because you can't get money from someone doesn't mean you can't connect with them and be helpful to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's a really good one. Maybe last question that I've been getting as a request a lot. Are you reading any books right now? Do you have something interesting to recommend that
Oh
has
my
helped
God,
you?
I just finished the Robin Williams biography, um, which was for a performer. Like it is a very sad book, uh, but as a performer, it made you realize like why are we all trying so hard?
What do you mean?
The whole book, like he was my Robin Williams was my idol, and like he is just like the most talented comedian on the face of the planet, and like half the book is him talking about how like critics hated him and he never felt like he was good enough, and he thought like Jim Carrey was gonna ruin his career because he was so talented, and like people didn't want to work with him because he wasn't a good actor. And I'm like, you are like the most phenomenal actor comedian I can think of. How could you even be having these thoughts? And just to see that like someone as phenomenal as him was also struggling with being accepted was just mind-blowing to me.
How did it affect you? What did you get out of that learning?
um Well, it made me a little depressed, and then then I felt I was like, it's good to be depressed, I guess, because he felt the same exact way. So yeah, it was just good to not feel alone.
Right. Guess that's a good one to close with because no, it's a bit depressing, but hear me out. I think knowing that we're not alone is
Yeah,
partially why we're doing this in the first place. I can tell you, like, from our end, like, the reason we did these events and doing the podcast, it's just realizing we're not alone.
yeah,
No matter how big you're becoming, everybody's
yeah,
struggling, which is kind of also what I learned. But at the same time, maybe the conclusion wouldn't be, oh, everything's bad and everybody's gonna hate us, but it's more like, we're not alone, everybody's struggling, but at the same time, it's trial and error. And if you keep
yeah.
just learning, then maybe we'll have those learning lessons that you'll have as well, going to your 10,000 subscribers and 100,000, a million, but also at the same time with your audience and how you learned from Comedy Central compared to, like, that gig that you got and eventually ended up being your becoming an agent came to you. I think it's just, I would add to that just a trial and error. We're not alone. It's hard. Everybody's struggling, but as long as you do trial and error, you'll kind of get ahead.
One thing that is similar to that I think it might be a little bit inspiring. There was this series on Netflix. It was about, like, I can't remember what it was called, but it was about, like, movies and where they came from.
Oh yeah, I
What
forgot
was
it.
that called?
Explained or something? No, I remember what you mean. They did one on Home Alone.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of.
I'm
What
pretty
was
sure
that
if you type
called?
in Home Alone in Netflix, you'll find the series. Director's Cut or something? Was it that one?
How it was made. Home Alone, Netflix. Oh, turn that off. Stop. No, where is that coming from? Stop talking. The movies that made us.
The movies that made us, right?
The movies that made us is all about these huge blockbuster successful movies and how they became huge successes. And pretty much every single one of them, at some point or another, was a complete failure. And the people that worked on it were not expecting it to be even a success at all. And it just kind of reminded me of that Robin Williams book and how it makes me feel like absolutely everything everyone makes sucks. Always. Everything everyone makes always sucks. And the only time something is successful is like winning the lottery. Like, you get lucky with that one thing. And the people that get lucky on it capitalize it and try and get lucky again. But if you're making something or working on something, it does suck because everything sucks. And it's just people that keep making sucky things cash out when they get the lucky one. So just keep working on whatever you're working on and keep hoping you get lucky. Like, the more times you try something, the more chances you have to get lucky. So that's kind of how I've felt about everything I've ever worked on lately.
That's so true also in business, that you're gonna do so many failures, and
Yeah.
it's usually that one that makes it worth it for all of the failures. With investment, same thing. So it's just interesting that also in the creative arts, it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's the same for everything. Everything sucks, you guys.
But I think that's a more positive one to kind of
Yeah.
close with. I really enjoyed this. I'm very happy that you came on. I
Cool.
really hope
Thanks.
the Kickstarter goes really well. We'll definitely promote it.
Thanks.
I'm definitely gonna be buying one, so
Yay! You're
um,
gonna have a lot of fun with it. It's a great game.
I'll definitely give you a testimonial and see how it goes. But thank you so much for coming on, and I hope to invite you once again after the Kickstarter or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be
See you.
great. Good luck
Thank
with
you.
everything.
If you liked this episode, you can check out our most recent one here. And if you haven't already, make sure you click here to subscribe and see the next one. But if you're interested in more tips and tricks, then make sure to join our Facebook group where you can find thousands of like-minded people and you get direct access and support to any business question from the entire startup funding event team.